right, folks. It's been too long since we've had our last guest on. I'm sure it was a great summer, but now it is about time to get back to work. Jets season just around the corner, and our next guest is the voice of the Winnipeg Jets with every minute of Winnipeg Jets action on Jets Radio 680 CJOB. All hail the king. Paul Edmonds returning to the program. Paulie, how are you? How was the summer? Are you ready to get back at it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really follow that introduction up any better than just saying thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. My phone's always on for you, Hustler, Remus, if you guys need me. Sad day this weekend coming up, though, because with mini camp starting on Thursday, things are getting rolling. I'm hauling the boat home, Andrew. On the weekend, we get a day off on Saturday. I'm hauling the boat home. That's it. So we're done smashing walleye, and we're now going to be talking about pucks full time. Hopefully for about the next, 8 or 9 months, maybe. You know?
The longer the better. A lot of excitement about the club. Hey, just before we get to it, how was the summer? I know you spent a lot of time on the boat. Was the fishing good? What were the highlights?
Well, as you know, I mean, it was a hot, dry summer that we had here. So, yeah, there was a lot of time on the boat. And actually, I swam a lot with my kids. And we had a lot of sort of water sports things that we did on top of trying to fish. And, you know, I had a young guy playing high-level baseball. So that was 5 days a week. And my daughter was interested in making a team that she wants to make for hockey. So she was skating back in July. She got back on the ice. So we were busy with other things other than just relaxing. And then, of course, from me, there was the transition of going from one entity as a work environment to another. So there was some things that I still had to kind of work through over the course of the summer. And that's all adjusted, and the transition's been real good. But it was a great summer. Glad it kind of cooled off a little bit in August. We got the rain that we needed. And now it looks like we've got a real good September weather-wise shaping up as well to kind of enjoy that last little bit of being outside before we get hunkered down with the cold weather still to come.
I have to say, we had plenty of conversations over the course of the run to the playoffs and early into the offseason before free agency and before trades. Everybody knew what the Winnipeg Jets target was. We weren't sure how Kevin Cheveldayoff was going to accomplish it. I would say, certainly from listening to the folks here every day on Winnipeg Sports Talk, that what was expected, you want to talk about over-delivering. People needed to get a defenseman in about 24 hours. Paul Stastny re-signed, Brendan Dillon becomes a Jet, and then Nate Schmidt becomes a Jet. Pretty hard to not be excited if you're a Jets fan about the moves that were made. And what's interesting, Paul, it was probably great for you in the boat through the month of August, as well as Jevy and everyone else. Everything was ticked off the list. I mean, we were talking about NHL news, desperate for anything in August. Not a lot happening in Winnipeg because it happened early. It happened in advance of free agency. And I think was put beyond what most people expected. And with that comes increased expectations for the upcoming season. How did you see it from your perspective with the moves the Jets made and how they look coming into training camp, especially on the blue line?
Yeah, make no mistake. I mean, our market is well versed in the fact that after a couple of years ago, you had Byfuglien, Sherratt, Myers, Trouba all depart for various reasons and in different circumstances and ways from the organization in the city, that there was a void. And they were, in fact, kind of chasing their tail in that department for a while to try to get back to, I guess, getting to the areas that they needed to get to improve, to go along with what was already a great goaltender, Vezina caliber trophy winning goaltender, a forward core that could outscore mistakes, but was never worried about scoring enough goals because there was always that plenty of offense that was there, but then defending a little bit better and being a little larger inside their own zone and making sure that they were protecting their house. And Kevin Cheveldayoff and his hockey operations staff did a marvelous job of securing those needs. After, I think, a couple of years of assessment, there was the recoiling in the first year of, okay, what do we do here? What do we have exactly? What are the pieces that we want to cling on to? And then last year seeing, okay, what do we need to do to get better? And they certainly did that, I think, with Brendan Dillon and with Nate Schmidt. You've got a couple of bona fide NHL guys, a guy in Nate Schmidt that can move the puck, that can have some fun, that can provide some levity and a lightheartedness, certainly, on the bench and in the room and in other environments that the players are always stuck in together. I mean, they spend a lot of time together. Brendan Dillon's a guy that can be a punisher as well as a puck mover and maybe have a bit of an offensive flair, but he knows that he has to use his size. Those two guys are really going to complement, I think, Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey very well, probably on the top four. Now, with training camp a week away, a week tomorrow starting, I know there's the mini camp starting on this Thursday for the players that might be on the bubble, and then full camp next week. I'm not going to be surprised if we see Paul Maurice, the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, mixing and matching, trying some experimentation to see who's going to work with whom. And then I guess if you're looking for that third pair matchup, it's probably going to be Logan Stanley and Dillon DeMello, the guys that were kind of going back and forth as to who you're going to protect on your protected list with the expansion Seattle Kraken coming in a few months ago. And then on the outside of that, you've got Nathan Beaulieu, Billy Hainala, you've got Dylan Sandberg, Sami Niku. So I think that the Winnipeg Jets do have some richness when it comes to the defensive core now, but they moved in a direction where they weren't all the same player. And getting a Nate Schmidt who can play his offside as a left-handed shot, very adept at playing the right-handed side, and then a bigger body there, certainly in Brendan Dillon, who has some grit and some toughness to him, I think is going to complement this defensive core that has some skill already. So that was the missing piece for me. I think that everybody all the way down from Mark Chipman through the organization realizes that this is going to be a competitive Winnipeg Jets team. And we can kind of splash that sentiment around, not be shy of the fact that I think there's going to be some pretty high expectations, some lofty expectations with the moves that were made by Kevin Cheveldayoff and his staff over the course of this offseason, coming into this new 82-game schedule. And boy, does it ever feel good to say 82-game schedule.
No doubt about that. Getting you guys back on the road and into NHL buildings, getting fans back in the buildings, get it back to what makes this the most incredible spectator sport around from my perspective. Just quickly on that, on those two notes, two things that you mentioned that I want to bring up. First off, I think Cheveldayoff deserves an incredible amount of credit for doing it in advance of free agency, because I tell you what, Paul, those deals looked great when they were made. You fast forward 3-4 days into free agency and saw the numbers that were getting thrown around for defensemen, and they looked even much better. I mean, the Jets have Brendan Dillon for 3 years at $3.9 million. No offense to Derek Forbort, at a strong first half of the season, I thought, played very well for the $1 million that he was earning. Derek Forbort got 3 years at $3 million. Tucker Pullman got $10 million for 4 years. You give some draft capital, which I think everyone realized that was the way to improve the team without touching the roster. They had the cap space to do it. It looked even better from my perspective because of the cap certainty of those players and the fact that those deals were made earlier than the bonanza that UFA defensemen were getting in the offseason. And the other thing, Paul, and you touched on this, is Nate Schmidt and his personality. We've talked to him a couple times on this program. I mean, we call him the electric factory. He just lights up the room. He gets everybody going. And I think that the Jets need that. They need a guy like that. I mean, at times everything was real serious. Sometimes it was sort of stiff around that team. And, to have a veteran player that, you can have a rookie come in, but they don't really have that spot in the dressing room. I think that Schmidt might help the Jets as much off the ice over the course of 82 games, because it is a long grind. It's probably the best job in the world, but it's still a job at times for these guys. And he's a guy that I think will make the team a little bit more fun to be around. And I think that's a real positive for the Winnipeg Jets going into 2021-22.
Yeah, something they haven't had a lot of, especially now that Dustin Byfuglien hasn't played here in 2 years. He was kind of that guy too, right? Mm-hmm. He liked to have fun. He liked to be jovial. He liked to poke shots at other guys and then have guys take shots at him. Nate Schmidt's going to be a little bit different that way than Buff, because Buff was sort of a larger-than-life character, and Nate Schmidt's not necessarily that. But you're going to get a guy that not only has that jovial personality and that can lighten the room and light up the room at the same time as you're talking about, but it also can play the game and eat up some minutes. Not to the degree that Dustin Byfuglien ever was able to do, where he could dominate a game. I don't think that Nate Schmidt has that ability in him. But this was something that I think Paul Maurice was really happy to get in his fold, a top four defenseman but also a guy kind of like an Anthony Botello. Remember they raved about Anthony Botello a couple of years ago? Well, Anthony Botello brought that to the room. The fact of the matter is he was probably your 6th, 7th, or 8th defenseman. Nate Schmidt's going to be in your top 4, so there's a difference that way. And with Winnipeg being at about $87 million right now up against the cap, there's still some maneuvering that has to take place before they drop the puck, certainly in Anaheim next month to start the season. But I think this was the best way. As you mentioned, there was cost certainty in these 2 acquisitions, certainly when you are upgrading your blue line in Brendan Dillon and in Nate Schmidt. So you've got, Brendan Dillon at a very favorable contract of just over $5 million or just over $5 million for Nate Schmidt. Each guy has multiple years left. So you have these guys for a couple of years. And I've talked about this before, and I'll be frank once again. There's a 3-year window that exists here. And after that, you don't know which way this is going to go. If you could get to where you want to get to or places that you want to get to in the next year or two, then you'll have the ability to try to kind of repeat. If you don't get anywhere close to where you want to get to in the 3 years, then I think that you're probably going to see a shift in the philosophy of this team right now going forward. But there is a 3-year window that exists right now, right here with this team. And I think the fan base expects that. And I know that the organization understands what's ahead. And what's ahead is an opportunity for this team to compete. And they had to do something with the blue line. But at the same time, the reason I say 3 years is because you have a lot of players on multi-year deals. And it's going to be tied part and parcel to what happens with Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler going forward, because a lot of those guys have 2 and 3 years remaining on their deals, and the Jets' fortunes will be tied to those guys plus the add-ons that they've had over the course of the offseason. So a lot of excitement here for sure, but I think they did it in such a shrewd, crafty way that they utilized those draft picks that they had, made sure that they fell under the cap. They were comfortable with the salaries that they were bringing in, but now there's still going to have to be some wiggle room here between now and the opening drop of the puck to get down to that $81.5 million salary cap.
Yeah, the wiggle room is not quite there for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's a big reason why Eric Comrie has the opportunity that he has in the net. And when we're talking about guys with 3 years left on his contract, I don't think there's any bigger one than 37 in between the pipes, and we know how important he's been for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll get to Comrie in a sec, but before we move on from the defense, I wanted to get your thoughts on Josh Morrissey going into the season. I think everyone felt for Josh and his family with the loss of his father and really knowing kind of what he was dealing with last year. And that's something off the ice that no one can really quantify. We do note that there were some struggles on the ice, but going into this season, playing as part of a top 4 that has Neil Pionk as well as the 2 newcomers, what do you expect from Josh Morrissey this season, and how much better of a situation has the team put forth for him to get back to the level we've seen him play at during his time here in Winnipeg?
Well, I think with the passing of his father, there's going to be an adjustment there, because in knowing Josh and a little bit of his father on a dad's trip from a number of years ago, I understand that there was quite a unique relationship between father and son that existed right through and into Josh's NHL playing days, Huss. And that is that they would talk on the phone. They would talk about things that his dad was seeing with Josh and the way he was playing. So that ability for Josh won't be there anymore. He won't have that confidence. So there's going to be an adjustment there. We'll see how he handles that. And, an unfortunate situation for their family. But I think Josh has matured as a player. He certainly has taken on the number 1 or the lead role, or one of them, on the blue line. That will be absorbed a little easier this year in another year of experience. Plus, you've got some other experienced defensemen to go along with that to maybe alleviate some of that pressure in Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. But to be succinct, to answer your question, I think what we can expect of Josh Morrissey is what we saw certainly in the Edmonton series, where he was up against McDavid or Draisaitl, or sometimes both, and handled those 2 guys with aplomb, especially on his side of center ice. That's the type of Josh Morrissey performance that I think that we can look forward to and challenge Josh to play more of when it comes to the 82-game schedule, not just 4 refined games against the Edmonton Oilers. I think there's a capability of him extrapolating those 4 games, and he finished up strong, and that's the way you always want to do it, certainly in a season, any sport, but there is the capability of him to move that a little bit further overall and spread that out over the course of the 82 games. All 82 aren't going to be Picasso's by any stretch of the imagination. You're going to have, games that are better than others for different reasons: travel, fatigue, not feeling great, hunger, certainly things in your life that are going on. But in saying that, I think that Josh can take another step in his development as a premier defenseman on the Winnipeg Jets this year. And I think he's certainly capable of that, would probably put that pressure on himself. But we've seen him take some good strides in that regard. And I think if you're looking to really focus in on one area where he did take that stride last year, was in that series against the Edmonton Oilers with the Winnipeg Jets sweeping in 4 games.
You got it. Paul Edmonds, voice of the Winnipeg Jets on Jets Radio 680 CJOB, is our guest. Paulie, I mentioned Eric Comrie. Huge opportunity for him coming in. The salary works. Part of it is the cap. There won't be really a guy that we assume will be pushing for him in the job, but I do think there is a lot at stake for him through training camp, through the exhibition season, as nothing is guaranteed and things can change and other guys can come on the market. What do you make of Comrie's spot in the organization coming in with an opportunity unlike he's had at any point in his playing career, with the door wide open to an NHL job with the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, let's see if he kind of soft shoe shuffles through it, or he just kind of kicks the door in and jumps across the threshold. At 26 years old, Eric Comrie has done everything possible for the Manitoba Moose, the city of Winnipeg, and the province of Manitoba when it comes to being an AHL player. He's been a great player, a great citizen, and quite frankly, the numbers speak for themselves in the American Hockey League with the Moose. The time is nigh, though, and he's going to be given the opportunity for him to become an NHL backup. And I think what he'll do is he'll be able to absorb some of those games and some of being around the NHL more on a full-time basis. So there is some opportunity for growth there. In my recollection of Eric as an NHL goaltender, it's always been because of an injury and a call-up, and then they thrust him into duty, and it kind of hasn't gone very well for him. I think of a couple of starts, Florida against Columbus being another one. This time he'll get an opportunity to sit kind of on the bench, take those NHL shots full-time, know that he is a full-time NHLer. But you are right. I mean, there may be some things that could happen in training camp. We're not sure. But right now, the Jets have tied their wagon when it comes to the goaltenders to Eric Comrie as the backup and Connor Hellebuyck as your starting goaltender. The key for me will be, how does Eric handle that situation and the move up on a full-time basis? The other part of this is that I'm going to look for is, how many games do you want Eric to handle? And by extension from that, and your primary position is your number one goaltender, and you're always looking out for him, how many games is Connor Hellebuyck going to be comfortable with? And therefore, how many games is Eric Comrie going to get? Is it going to be 55 for Hellebuyck? Is he going to be in the neighborhood of 60? So does Eric Comrie get 22 games or 25? Where's the number? Where's the sweet spot? So that's what they have to work out this year. But I think that based on the past performance sheet, the resume of Eric Comrie, that this ascension from the AHL to the NHL is well-deserved, and it's certainly timely. Let's see what happens.
Paulie, let's look at the forwards. We won't spend much time on the top 6. I think everyone knows there'll be a big spotlight on Pierre-Luc Dubois as much as maybe any other player. He's going to be there with a new number, a clean slate, and he'll be there. The big absence coming out of the offseason is Mason Appleton, who fits so well with Adam Lowry and Andrew Kopp on that Jets third line, if you want to call it that. Give me your pre-training camp power poll for, guys that are in the pecking order, at least before we see anything on the ice, to take that spot on a very important role for Coach Paul Maurice that will come with a lot of responsibility and a lot of ice time.
Well, I want to start with top 6 real quick. I mean, you're going to have probably Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler or Ehlers flipping on that side, and whoever's that right winger on that number 1 line, then by default, you're going to have probably Stastny, Dubois, and then the other guy on the right-hand side, either Wheeler or Ehlers. So there's your top 6, right? I still think that you've got to kind of keep the band together, or at least 2/3 of it, and that's Lowry and Kopp. They seem to work hand in hand. Kopp knows where his bread is being buttered. He's on a 1-year deal. He's going to try to extrapolate that into a multi-year deal for multi-millions going forward if he can have another good year. He knows that it's a safe spot being with Adam Lowry. He's going to get lots of ice time, an opportunity on maybe some power play situations because there's no more Matthew Perreault competing for that spot, and maybe some penalty kill as well. But once you go to one specialty team, usually you don't get to the other or to get the opportunity on the other, and everybody wants to play power play because you're going to get opportunities for more points, and points mean more dollars. Who's going to be on the right side? Mason Appleton's not there anymore, Hustler, but I look for Christian Vesalainen to try to take that spot at training camp. I think it's his to lose. I think we saw signs of Christian Vesalainen starting to emerge as that number 1 draft pick that we expected him to, maybe a year or two earlier than what we saw last year or what he presented before last year. But we saw a guy that was able to skate, shoot the puck, and go up and down the wing and be defensively responsible toward the end of the season, and made quite an impression, on the coaching staff. His next move is to be able to come off the wall in a puck battle and make a play. That's the next step for Christian Vesalainen. He's going to get an opportunity, I believe, to earn that job on the right wing side on the third line alongside Adam Lowry, and then flanked over to his far left by Andrew Kopp. The fourth line, there's some gray area there. There's opportunity. There's no question about it. You've lost Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis. So now there's some holes to fill. Matthew Perreault, as I mentioned. So I think Riley Nash is going to be the guy that's going to be penciled in there, probably as a centerman right now. But David Gustafsson is not far behind him. He's being groomed and had a real good year last year in the American Hockey League for that fourth line center role. That also leaves now Jansen Harkins with an opportunity to become a full-time NHLer. And if I'm Jansen Harkins, I'm saying, where do you want me to go, coach? I can play the left, I can play the right, I can play the middle. Where do you need me to go? I just want to play. I want to earn a spot. So he's going to have an opportunity. And I think that they did a real good job of re-signing Dominic Toninato, because what we saw him in a small sample size last year was a guy that can skate, that has some NHL tread on the tire from his days in Colorado from before, and an opportunity for him to be maybe that guy that fits in as a plug-and-play guy on the left side, right side, wherever you need him on that fourth line. So there is some jobs to earn. Certainly, I think that there's some names in pencil on that right side and the third line, and then the entire fourth line. But another guy that I would say, from if you're looking to elevate somebody, Christian Reichel, a right-handed shot, seems to have scored and done all the right things at the American Hockey League level. Let's see what he does at training camp. He's going to get an opportunity at the mini camp that starts coming up on Thursday of this week. And let's see if he can have a good start to that and then get into main camp. But there's opportunities, there's jobs, there should be really good competition amongst, I would say, half a dozen guys to earn probably 4 spots on the bottom end of that lineup for the Winnipeg Jets. But for the most part, as you mentioned, your top 2 lines and 2/3 of your third line are set in stone, but still 4 jobs to go for a lot of guys that are vying for them as full-time NHLers.
Well, you nailed it. I mean, basically, it's exactly the way I see it. I mean, I think Vesalainen being a first rounder, they would love for him to jump up and grab that spot. And then you've got, Harkins and Gustafsson and Nash and Toninato probably battling each other to be the 3 guys in the lineup on that, assuming everyone is healthy. And that would be great if everyone's healthy, but that isn't usually the case. So I think all those guys are going to play considerable minutes. It is interesting, though, Paulie, when we talk about the opportunity there for the depth spots at the forward group and how different it is on the blue line with the additions of Dillon and Nate Schmidt. I think a lot of people, myself included, would be comfortable to see Ville Heinola or Dylan Sandberg playing in the National Hockey League coming into the fall. I don't think that is sort of in the cards right now, assuming everyone is healthy. It could change very quickly. Because when you look at the top 6, we're including Logan Stanley in that group, along with Dylan DeMello and the 4 guys that we mentioned. Nate Beaulieu being on contract and Sami Niku on a league minimum deal. I think it really does behoove the organization to let these guys go and play 23, 24, 25 minutes a night on a nightly basis with the Manitoba Moose. So when they get the call, it's not like it's been before where you might go in and play 5 or 6 minutes. They'll have young men that are ready to go in and play the role that they are replacing. And man, that's a different story in Winnipeg than we've seen in previous years.
And that's a good point. I mean, much probably to the chagrin of Billy Hainala, who made an impression a couple of seasons ago in training camp and then through the start of the regular season, probably doesn't want to hear that maybe the best place for you is the American Hockey League playing 25 minutes a night. But right now, given the current configuration of the blue line of the Jets, that's the best spot for him. So that when you do get that opportunity, as you suggested, and I don't want to repeat exactly what you said, but when you do get that opportunity, and there is going to be opportunity, that you step right in, and there's not any sheltering or coddling going on. So that's probably a good place for Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg to be your top two defensemen, perhaps at the American Hockey League level. It's going to be interesting to see because Nathan Beaulieu brings some grit and, a seventh defenseman opportunity there. And I know the guys love him in the dressing room. So there's going to be some competition for a lot of spots there on that bottom sort of 7, 8, and 9 defenseman kind of spots for the Jets. And then whoever doesn't make the team, and I think some salary cap considerations are going to be in play here, will have to be waived and then maybe sent down. And that could come at the cost of a guy that might be a veteran guy because they have to free up some cap space. Another guy that we haven't talked about, going back to the forwards just for a second, and I know that he didn't start out all that hot with the Manitoba Moose. Probably should have been back in the OHL, but they didn't play last year. He doesn't have to go back this year. But that's 19-year-old Cole Perfetti, number 1 draft pick of the Winnipeg Jets, a first-round selection. As the year went along in the American Hockey League last year, he got better and better and better and more dominant. And then I think the apex to his season was the fact that he went and represented Canada at the World Championships, and a team that starts 0-3 and ends up winning under the tutelage of Gerard Gallant the gold medal. And he's a big part of that. And I think in terms of his development, the AHL was really good for him last year. The World Championship experience in representing Canada again was excellent for him. So does he push in? Does he push into a center ice spot or a winger spot? So if those guys, Samberg, Heinola, Perfetti, don't make the team out of training camp and they want those guys to go down and play multiple minutes, not only do you have the expectation of this National Hockey League team and the Jets coming through with bigger and better expectations and things that they want to certainly accomplish and maybe get to the ultimate prize, but I think the American Hockey League team and the Manitoba Moose will be well situated as well to try to make a run at a Calder Cup, or at least challenge for something in that regard. I heard today from a member of the upper organization of True North Sports and Entertainment, there is expectation not only on the Jets to perform this year, but the Moose as well, because they think that they have 2 really good hockey teams here in the city.
The Moose are set up for success more than maybe any point since the NHL team came here or they came to Winnipeg. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And just a quick thought on Perfetti, from my perspective, Paul, I think the best thing that happened to him was that rule change where he can play in the American Hockey League because, and listen, maybe he comes in and just lights it up and they simply have no choice. But if we've learned anything, and look at what's happened with Heinola and stuff, I mean, they don't rush players. And at some point, as a young guy, you need to basically show up and say, you have no choice but to put me into the lineup. And if the option was either to have him with the NHL team or go back to the Ontario Hockey League, I think it would be likely that he could be on the club, but it wouldn't necessarily be because he's ready and he has to be in the lineup. And then you're doing a lot of practicing, you're doing a lot of bag skates, you're eating a lot of popcorn in the press box. And I don't think that's a great spot for a 19-year-old to be. With him able to come in, play preseason games, get into some games, go down the hall to the Manitoba Moose, play a top line role, play the power play, do everything that he did last year, where especially in the second half of the season, I mean, he was a legit star in that league as opposed to getting his feet wet earlier on. It's the perfect scenario for the Winnipeg Jets, and I would say the player as well, because as much as, you want to get there as fast as possible, there's also the contract to continue to think about with, flipping over the ELC, but I think he goes to Manitoba, plays a ton, and then if injuries dictate that there's a spot, or later on in the season, after he's had what's hopefully a great year, all of a sudden that sort of addition without making a trade can come in and make a big impact at the end of the season, and most importantly in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And once that happens, you're basically a regular going forward.
Couple of things on that. I don't think the Jets are really worried about, I do believe, they're not worried about starting the clock on Cole Perfetti. If they feel like he's ready to go, they're not going to bury him in the minors because they don't want to start the clock on him and start the ELC and then, get to that 40-game threshold or there and about where you scrape a year off of his eligibility toward free agency. I don't think they're worried about any of that. I think they're worried about developing this player. And the other thing about that is, well, you say, well, Cole Perfetti, he should be playing in the National Hockey League. He's good enough, but he's not going to assume a third or fourth line role. I just don't believe that that's where he is pegged to be.
Makes no sense for them to do that.
Sense.
Play 6 minutes on the fourth line and
right.
In a role that he won't be playing when he is a regular in the NHL. Play with the Moose. I mean, yeah.
Play that top line role with the Moose. And then, as you mentioned, if there is an injury, let's throw out this scenario for a minute. Let's say Pierre-Luc Dubois has a great start, but gets hurt. And now Cole Perfetti is playing so well in the Moose. Well, you call him up, of course. Boom, he goes right in that spot because that's what you're grooming him for. And maybe at some point to be your top center. Who knows what's going to happen with Mark Scheifele in 3 years? I mean, he'll be an unrestricted free agent. The Jets will have to make a decision on what they want to pay him. He'll have to make a decision on what he wants or what he thinks he's worth. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of these guys that have played within an organization for a long time like the loyalty factor, but also realize that coming out of that long-term contract, there's one more deal left probably for them. They really get paid. And if you're looking for 10, 11, or $12 million, Winnipeg might not be the place for that. So Cole Perfetti, you've got to have him in queue because at some point he's going to be your top or second line center within this organization. So go down, play all those minutes, play all those important minutes, play those important roles down on the Manitoba Moose, because maybe at some point, who knows, at the juncture that you'd least expect, you might get an opportunity this coming season to be plugged and played into that spot as a number one or number two or maybe even number three center. But there makes no sense for him to be killing penalties and playing on the fourth line to start the season at the NHL level this year.
Paul Edmonds, voice of the Jets on Jets Radio 680 CJOB, has been our guest. Paulie, last one for you. It's been a long time since we've had any sense of normalcy around, well, all of our lives, to be honest. The two times that have been the most normal and the most enjoyable was the first Bomber game and the Banjo Bowl, and I hope we'll have similar enjoyment when we get to the rink. But for you personally, what are you most looking forward to on, I believe it's October 24th, when the Jets host the Ducks in that home opener, and you get to say, it's showtime in downtown Winnipeg? How was that?
That's pretty good. I am looking forward, honestly. I said this, and it just, you know me, Hustler, so I don't blow smoke. I really don't. I'll say what's on my mind. If I really think that you did a great job, I'm going to tell you, because I'm not going to make up a bunch of lies and try to pat you on the back and smooth things over and think that, I'm just going to give you a line. I truly missed the fans last year. There was an ambiance, an atmosphere that was devoid in the buildings that we went to. Certainly for me, it was our home rink and then into Montreal. Now, by the time we got to Montreal, there was some fans in the building, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't a packed house, but it still was a better ambiance than what we had in doing games from a remote location and then into an empty building. So I am looking forward to the fans getting in. All the preparations are being made for a full house all season long for the Winnipeg Jets, 15,000 plus. So, the same rules apply as the Gold Eyes and as the Bombers. And by the way, I talked to some people that went to a Bomber game, Hustler, the first one, and there was just this feeling of emancipation. Like there's just this liberating feeling of getting back out and being amongst people. Same thing I took my kids to last Friday's game against the Winnipeg Gold Eyes against Fargo in their last weekend before the long weekend. So I guess it would have been about a week and a half ago now. And we just felt that liberating feeling as well. Well, you're going to get that with the hockey team as they open the doors to people that are fully vaccinated and the way you go. And there's going to be that atmosphere, that ambiance, that that certain environment that we've missed for all of these months, and especially last year during the 56-game schedule. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the fans to come back in the building. I'm excited for the players to play in front of the fans again, because I really believe that they missed that. The games got going because these guys are uber competitive, but I think sometimes to start, before they got a lather on, there was just something that just wasn't right about the whole scenario in empty buildings. We're not going to have that anymore. I'm looking forward to it. That's what I've missed the most, and that's what I think is the most exciting part about the start of this season, the 82 games, but having 41 of them back here in downtown Winnipeg with a full house.
Yeah, dude, the combination of what the team did in the offseason and the legitimate excitement about what the team might be capable of back in the Central Division, getting all the teams there and having the fans back in the building, it is right. And I'll echo your thoughts about the Bomber games. I mean, that first one was such a spell. I'll never forget it. For everything that we've been through, and everyone got there an hour and a half early because they thought it was going to take 45 minutes to get the Vax card checked. It took like 2 seconds if you were ready for it. And it was just phenomenal. And the scene we had at the Banjo Bowl on Saturday was, absolutely electric. The team's kicking ass. I got to tell you, I've been so excited about everything going on with the Bombers this year. Got a chance to get up to the ballpark and see the Gold Eyes when they came back. The NFL's back right now, so we've got lots to talk about. But I'll tell you what, nothing is going to be like getting back into that arena and seeing this hockey team come out, listen to you call the games, and hopefully move on from a pretty dark year, certainly for the entertainment and sports industry, but for sports fans that have missed this opportunity so much. This has been amazing, dude. I cannot wait to do this again with you during the season. RIP to fishing season. Get that boat out of the water on Saturday. And all the best to the family as well. Give them my best, and let's do this again soon. Say hi to the gang down at the office, JT and everyone, and let's do this again soon.
My pleasure. 2 things, and you know him. It's my youngest guy's 13th birthday today, so happy birthday to my youngest
Nolan,
boy, Nolan.
13.
Nolan's 13 today, yeah. And in the infamous words of Bob McKenzie, we're going to get on the air, and we're going to talk about nothing until nothing's good enough, Hustler, and I can't wait to do it.
We've been doing that all summer, to be honest with you. Let's get on with the season. Have a good one, dude. Thanks so much. Yeah. There he is, the one and only Paul Edmonds, at Utility Voice on Twitter. He is the voice of the Winnipeg Jets. And, man, that was an awesome, awesome interview. I was already fired up for the season, but getting Paulie in here, hearing him talk about it, and I'm sure many fans feeling the same way.